All right, Ingrid Campos, candidate for Palo Alto Board of Education. We would love to start with just a little bit of insight into your interest in running for the board. When did you start thinking about this? Was there a particular trigger? We know that you have children who've gone through the school district, so you are a parent and familiar with the schools. Tell us a little bit about your thinking and how you got to this place.
So, yes, I do have children in the PAUSD, and that was a big factor. That played a big factor. I thought that I could make a difference. I've always been very civic-minded and volunteered my time to my community. When I was living in Los Altos Hills, I served on the Parks and Recs Committee for 5 years, and 2 of those years I served as chairwoman of the Parks and Recs Committee. And that always bridged me, my family, to the community. And I really enjoyed that. And I think it's really important to make volunteering a part of your life, to give back in a way that doesn't just pay you, that's not just motivated by money. So I'm not part of a church where people might volunteer and give their service to the church. I thought that I would give my service to the community, and the part of the community that I knew best about was the school, because my children are in school. And you asked me when I decided to run. Yeah. Well, I had a couple of parents who encouraged me and who thought they may have run or were thinking about running. So we all sort of delved into it together, and it ended up that none of them ran and I did. So I would have to say I did have support from parents and people who encouraged me.
And tell us a little bit about some of the like the priorities or the issues that led you to think, well, now would be a good time to jump in on the school board race. What's been on your mind?
I think one of the biggest issues is my children are a little bit older now, so I have more time, because I'm a devoted parent, a loving mother, and I devoted my time and forwent career options to be with my children and to raise them, and to be very involved in their education and the educational system in which we are. I grew up in San Francisco. We moved to Redwood City and the kids were in 1st and 2nd grade in Redwood City. And then we moved to the Palo Alto School District when we lived in Los Altos Hills, and now we live in Palo Alto. And that was also very important for me to see the difference in the school districts. We are I always want to stress how fortunate we are here in the Palo Alto School District. We're an affluent community, and we definitely have the best of everything. And we don't have some of the issues and the problems that other school districts have. So we're really fortunate. And I didn't see this as sort of an adversarial or contentious role. I looked at this as a way for me to give back as a parent, to bridge the community, to bridge myself, my family, with the community, with the school board. And maybe I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But
no one does.
The genuine interest that I have in my children's education, and all children's education, which was the community, the bridging between me and the other parents, or we have similar viewpoints and what's important for us, our children.
Okay, great. Now I also know that you are a businesswoman. But I don't know much about what companies you've worked for or what kind of roles you've played, because you reference, familiarity, understanding of accounting and budgets and revenues, et cetera. So could you just fill that gap in for my knowledge?
So I'm a business administration specialist, and that means I focus on business administration projects on a project by project basis. I am employed. My employers ask not to be disclosed, even though the information's out there. They're high net worth clients, and I work on projects for them. I also owned a business with my husband for 12 years in Redwood City. We did construction remodeling company, and I did all of the books and the financials, and put all the systems in place, negotiated the leases, the machinery, the equipment, the purchasing, international equipment purchasing. And before that, I served as an executive assistant. I worked in insurance. I was an insurance life agent, and I worked for many startups and small businesses. And I've always done bookkeeping and financial accounting, managed finances. So I'm very comfortable with balance sheets and income statements. And, I really know what the machinations of a business are. Money comes in, money goes out. Let's see where it's working. Let's see where it's not working. So those things are very familiar to me. We had a business orientation meeting last week with the PAUSD. It was extremely insightful to see all the pie charts, all the data, all where, how the cogs of the wheel play in place with what's going on, because the PAUSD is like a giant corporation. It's not just the school board. Everybody has to be held accountable. The school board perhaps holds the administration accountable, and we're held accountable by the community, the people, the taxpayers, and it's really a joint effort. And I think that my experience as a business person sets me on a solid foundation for that kind of interaction. And being a parent whose children have gone through the system. None of the other opponents have children who have gone through the system. They're all at the early stages of the school system.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
I wanted to ask one thing off of that. You've spoken about the importance of fiscal accountability for the district and about the district's budgeting. How would you assess the district's current financial situation, and what changes, if any, do you think should be made?
The district's financial situation is really good, apparently. And what we learned from the business orientation meeting is even if they spent a little bit more in this department, there's still enough tax revenue in this department. So it's almost an equal 50-50. The tax revenue is abundant, and that's where the funding comes in. And so, as I understand, Dr. Austin had talked about looking over certain areas that may have been redundant. He didn't convey or detail those items to me, but he talked about perhaps he wants to focus on looking at services that might be redundant or that could be extracted, or where we can add. So it's always juggling funds, resources, reallocating. So the district looks like it's in really good health. It looks like it's in really good health.
So I want to move to a different topic then now. You were the only candidate at our forum to express some dissatisfaction with the lack of transparency that the board showed after it let go of its general counsel. And the board did not explain what led up to the closed session, which is pretty important given that the decision was voted on in just 4 minutes. So I want to ask you, did you as an individual attempt to find out what happened in that situation?
I asked a couple people.
Okay. How would you have handled what had happened had you been on the board? Would you have been proactive and issued an announcement about it? Would you have been reactive? What is just your overall kind of feeling?
As I understand that a closed session is a closed session, and that means they're not allowed to divulge the details or the circumstances behind that. But I, as a community member, a mother, a parent, I would have liked to know why the secrecy. I'd like to know. And that's part of the transparency. What is so secretive about it? Was it a personal reason? Then I understand that they can't discuss the employees' personal reasons. But was there another reason? Was there, was it financial? Was it, I have no idea. Yes, I am dissatisfied with that answer. I don't understand whether it's a closed session or not. If they're not talking about it, then there's something to hide, is my opinion. That is basically my opinion. And I don't understand why it's so hush hush. Closed session or not, I don't understand what the big deal is. Maybe they let her go because they already have one lawyer on the board and they want to get another one on the board. I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, our understanding, and Zoe was intimately involved in trying to report this story, was
I think I read the article. Yes.
Yeah, a lot had obviously transpired before the closed session. So even if what happened at the closed session cannot be disclosed, at least we could have been told what the process was, and we didn't get even that kind of information. So
I agree. And I think, and I'd like to know why I'm the only one. Am I the only one who has the balls to say it, or you know what? I just like to know. I think it should, what's the big secret?
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the role of the board member and the idea of representing the school community. We hear a lot from candidates that they want to represent everyone, but after watching the school district for a while, we realize that there's quite a diversity of very strongly held opinions by people in the school community. And it's been parents who have had the sharpest and most heated disagreements over math and over language curriculum. So to you, what does it mean to represent the school community? And really kind of getting into it is the question of how do you prioritize the needs when the needs conflict with one another? Can you talk us through what you would do as a board member?
Well, I think one important thing when you're in a sort of a leadership role, or you're there to serve the people, that you have to be open, and you have to be open for communication, and you have to be able to listen, and also realize that you can't resolve all of the issues that may come up. But perhaps there's a direction in which you can point a parent, a concerned citizen, even a student who have their issues. We talked about the student voting and the ad hoc committees that the students are on. But so I think, a good leader isn't somebody who makes all the decisions and affects the journey on which we derive towards that particular issue, topic, subject. A good leader will listen to everybody and will synthesize everything they hear and try to find a way, a solution, a direction to make those things happen. So I'm sorry if the answer is a little bit ambiguous, but the focus of the position of a leader is to listen to everybody, synthesize all the information, and see how we can get there as a collective. And that means everybody, because everyone is giving a board member, one board member, me or anybody else that you might interview, way too much credence and power. That we all have opinions and viewpoints, but we all have a different way of functioning within this leadership role.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm thinking of a situation it probably was like 10 years ago now, but it kind of became known as math wars. Perhaps you remember that, or maybe not. But when you have it's just two very different options in front of you, and people are going to be unhappy one way or the other.
Right.
I mean, how are you kind of walking through that situation with people so that some people aren't just completely upset at the end? Or is that just what's to be expected?
Well, I wasn't here 10 years ago. I mean, was I 10 years ago? Yeah, I wasn't living here yet, but
it could have been longer ago too. Yeah.
But for example, recently I just read, if somebody, and this is a great solution for some people, maybe not everybody, but recently I read that if you're in high school and you're not getting the advanced math that you desire, that you have the option to take classes at Foothill. So for example, my daughter is opting for middle college, and she's going to be taking some more challenging classes at Foothill while she's still enrolled at Gunn. So I don't know if some parents like that or if that's a solution for them, but those are the kinds of things that I would try to discover, to find for people. And you're right, not everyone is going to be happy. And it's just like in a family, when you come to some family decision, not everyone's going to be happy. Or I remember when we moved out of Redwood City, no one was happy. And then we moved at Christmas time. So, I think it's just important to be informed. And I think on the forum the other night, I said, I don't know why the school district can't, or each individual school, offer elective courses like they do with art and photography with, AP humanities, or even math, or one AP, whatever, calculus class or something. I think that there could be a solution. And of course, then we're going to go back to, well, do we have the teachers? Do we have the personnel to fill that position? But we don't know unless we try. But I think it's interesting how with electives are kind of, whatever, they're those classes over there, but they don't have to be. I don't know. I think I don't even know if that's possible to look at solutions like that, but true. Everyone's not going to be happy all of the time. But if we can offer a solution like that, like the thing that I just discovered, that if your child is in high school and they want to access a more advanced math class, then they have the option and actually the opportunity. And this is where I talk about parental rights. Know what your rights are within the school district. Then you have the right to go take a math class at Foothill. And right now, a lot of those classes are asynchronous, which means they're online. So that's great. That means your, whatever, sophomore or junior doesn't have to travel to Foothill. I think there are great options for things that one may not know about. And maybe as a board member, I might have more access to that kind of information. I might be more, available to it. And then it's my hope to become an ally to the parents and the community, and of course, functioning on the board and the administration.
So it sounds like having more options and the awareness of more options is one of the things that you potentially see a lack right now, or could see that as being a solution in the future.
Absolutely. And one of the student journalists said, oh, parent education. And I said, well, I don't know if it's education, but yeah, I guess it is. Information is education. Information is power. Definitely.
All right. Let's go to the topic of student achievement. I believe it's on our questionnaire, that you were suggesting as a way to level the playing field that potentially free tutoring, free peer tutoring, or teachers giving up some of their time to tutor students would be one method for bringing up the education, the achievement level for those who are struggling. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm pretty sure I didn't say teachers should give up their time.
For example. No, I think you said paid. I think you said paid.
Yeah, paid options. And especially if they're non-certificated teachers, they might be happy to take on an hour or two during the week, teaching. When we were in the Los Altos School District for a semester, because when we moved to the Palo Alto School District, we got in too late. I told you we moved right around Christmas time and the offices had closed. So we had to register with the alternative, which when you live in Los Altos Hills was Los Altos School District. And they had what was called homework help in school. And the teachers were paid to run those programs. And not only was that helpful for the students, and then some of the older students helped the younger students, which is where the peer tutoring came in, but the teachers were paid, and I got an extra hour to work or to get to school so that I could get my kids. And I think that's huge. I think it's huge for parents to have resources like that, homework help, which is what it is. And then within that is peer tutoring, and it could also offer the high school kids community service hours towards their graduation community service. I know they're always looking for work like that. My kids are in 4-H, so we're inundated with community service hours. And I think it'd be helpful for parents, and especially the parents from lower socioeconomic levels who are maybe don't speak English, or want their children to succeed and don't know how, or don't have the money. I think it would be a very useful program to pump money into for the community, instead of always talking about disparity and socioeconomic falling through the cracks.
Yeah. So you kind of just touched upon one of the questions I have, which is we always need to fund improvements or additions. And how would you see this kind of expanded tutoring paid for, or how would you see that funded?
Well, again, I want to go back to one board member is not going to make the whole wheel of the corporation go, but Dr. Austin talked about reviewing some of the programs that were in place and which ones were redundant, which ones were functional, which ones were useful, which ones are, actually really valuable. And the numbers never lie to some extent, unless they're manipulated. Data is manipulated, but I'm talking about, dollars and cents when there's money there, and sometimes you just have to take away from one place and put to another place. I mean, I've done that in our business where, okay, times are rough and we're not going to spend as much marketing because we didn't make as much from this marketing. So where are we going to focus and allocate the limited funds that we have? So I know there's a dream catcher program, and I've heard parents say that that was an invaluable service to them. And I understand that it sort of expanded into the high school department, and it's not going as well. And I don't know the reasoning behind that, and that they were thinking of eliminating the high school dream catcher program. So I don't know about that.
And I wanted to ask, you also mentioned in the questionnaire that you'd support the district offering childcare potentially for students in elementary or middle school. And I was wondering, how would that differ from the existing before and after school care offerings that the district has, whether from Palo Alto Community Childcare, Kids Choice, or right at school?
Well, is it on campus? I don't know. I know there was one at Nixon. I know there's one at Nixon, and it's in the process of, there's some change going on. They're going to get rid of it. At the time they didn't have another contractor, and so it's kind of up in the air. I'm not sure, but I think that's an important part of the Palo Alto School District, of any school district.
Right. My understanding is that at Nixon, they had Kids Choice as a provider and ended up reallocating one of the classrooms to right at school. And obviously there was the whole debate in the spring about the future of different childcare providers in the Palo Alto School District. I'm curious, what do you believe the long-term solution should be for childcare, whether sticking with existing providers, using newer providers like right at school, or another option entirely?
Well, I think providers are like vendors. You always have to keep your eye on them to see how they're running the programs. I remember when I looked into the childcare at Nixon, that I couldn't even get in. The wait list was super, super long. And I don't know. I think it's an important factor to have in the school district. And if there's no space, there's no space. What can you do? I mean, there's, long wait lists. I mean, there should be some financial aid for people that can afford it. I don't really have the perfect solution, but I think it's an important factor to have. It's an important factor to have in the community and within the school district. And vendors are always, sorry, gotta turn down my phone. It's going to be an important factor for parents, for students, and especially for working parents who need that kind of service. So I think that needs to definitely be looked at and kept in the forefront.
Let's talk a bit about Superintendent Don Austin and your assessment of his performance. Is that he's doing a pretty excellent job. So my first question is just that I'd like to hear from you what aspects of his performance lead you to this kind of strong positive assessment of him. What is he doing well?
I definitely appreciate all his communication. He's always been very open about what's going on in the school district, and that's something new to me. And because I've had experience in other school districts, I thought that was never an option. It seemed very closed doors, and I've often sent him emails. I was very unhappy with the amount of time that the schools were closed during the pandemic, and I was always sending him emails asking him, so what's your stance? What are you going to do? What are you going to do for us? And it was just always open. And I realized, he's not the only person who is making the decisions. I realize there's a whole slew of people making decisions and a lot of pressure from all directions. But I really appreciate the professionalism he's brought to the Palo Alto School District. I appreciate how he manages his administrative team, the team that he's built, the way that they're retaining and attracting people, and they're really putting a focus on hiring from within, which I think also boosts morale within the administration. So I think he's bringing a lot of professional sort of corporate best case scenarios into the school district.
All right. I don't know if you've heard any of the criticisms of him, but we've certainly heard from some parents who feel like when they express concern that their messages to him are met with sort of a dismissive tone or just sort of a negativity. And I'm wondering, first of all, have you similarly heard these concerns? And second, how would you handle such complaints if you were on the board?
Well, I haven't heard any of those complaints, but that doesn't mean, I only speak to whatever, a dozen or so people. So that's not really saying much. I personally have never had dismissive emails, and I have emailed him, let me tell you. And and I've never received, I've received very sort of business-like emails and very unemotional. And so in my mind, I took that as a very diplomatic man. I'm a woman. I'm maybe more emotional in my, dialogue or my emails, but I never heard comments like that. And as a board member, if I ever got wind of something like that, or that it was important, then, it's easy. A little email, a discussion, or a call is easy to make. So again, I would love to be able to bridge the gap between the community, the board, Dr. Austin, whoever. I mean, I'm a communicator, and communication is going to be really important. And sometimes people are offended by something that shouldn't be offended. Haven't you ever had a remark and took offense to it, and somebody said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way," or for whatever reason? So I don't know. I think communication is super important in any aspect, in any relationship with anybody. And I have just never had that experience with him. And I told you, I've sent him lots of emails, lots of long-winded emails.
You became a regular correspondent with him.
Where he said, "Oh, it's finally nice to meet you," in person.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I want to ask you about something that came up in the forum. You made a statement about students needing to be treated as individuals, potentially rather than by racial identifier. And I want to ask you, in light of the fact that there's data that shows some racial disparities, like on the whole, with achievement, some racial groups achieving less than others. What are your thoughts on addressing what must be, there's some sort of factors affecting groups of students as opposed to just treating them individually? I mean, doesn't that suggest that there should be some sort of different kinds of aids being offered to groups of students that on the whole aren't performing as well?
Well, so when I was in college, I went to UCLA and I tutored for the academic advancement program, and it was specifically only open to Blacks and Hispanics. And most of those students were affluent students. And so the errant white and Asian and other race that wasn't specified or designated in that program was unable to have that tutoring. So I did have students that I tutored personally on the side because they needed it. And I thought it was unjust. I'm half Hispanic and I'm half European. But I don't want to be bundled into or jumbled into the Hispanic set just because of my race or ethnicity. I think first and foremost, I think students fall through the loopholes or don't perform well because there is socioeconomic, housing, and food insecurity. There's a lot of that kind of insecurity that's more directly related to financial reasons and not because. And it might be a, yes, indeed, it might be because it's a race or it's a certain race or ethnicity. But I think it's, we've just gotten in a habit in California, and it's deeply ensconced in the California fabric that, the Blacks and the Hispanics. But there are lots of people who need help and resources and are falling through the cracks, and maybe not here in Palo Alto, that has more to do with their financial health than it has to do with their race and ethnicity. And race and ethnicity might just fall into part of that category. But I don't understand. I feel like it's divisive that everyone has to keep focusing on race and ethnicity. So where have we come 20 years later? Are we any further along in that disparity gap as a result of focusing on race and ethnicity? Are we any further along? Because all of my students in the academic advancement program who received free tutoring at UCLA were all affluent, they came from affluent families. So I would just, that is my mindset. It's like, I think we need to focus on financial need versus just, oh, you're, Black or Hispanic. And I was especially offended by the term of brown people. I don't think people want to be referred to as brown people. I don't think people want to be jumbled into race and ethnicity. They want to be addressed as individuals.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about if as a school district, if you see the data on performance and you say, oh, this group over here is not performing as well, does that like as a board member, would that not sort of make sense to say we need to give certain aids to this group of people so that they can rise up and perform at the same level? I mean, is that not what we're talking about?
It is, but data is equated by, by an equation of if this, then that. So what if you added to that into the equation, the financial need? No one is looking at the financial need. It's always race and ethnicity. Like nobody makes you check mark, oh, unless it's for meals. Are you making less than 185,000 a year in the district, then you can get free meals. But that is the only place where they're actually asking you for your financial health. That's the only ways.
Well,
yeah, go on.
Oh, I was going to ask you, as an example, when it comes to literacy initiative, the Palo Alto School District has the Every Child Reads initiative, or Every Student Reads initiative, where they're looking to improve scores for particular groups that include Hispanic students. They also include low-income students. They also include disabled students. So when it comes to those kinds of initiatives that are looking at multiple groups, some of which include race or ethnicity, do you oppose those efforts?
No, of course not. I do not. But if you're going to look at the groups, I don't understand why. I think it's very divisive. I don't understand why it has to be continuously pinpointed that this race, this ethnicity is falling through the cracks. Does it matter? When I'm talking to you, should I call you the white girl and you the Asian girl and you the long hair dude? I think we want to be treated as a specific individual. And okay, disabled, and okay, this group and this group. And it is important to look at the literacy but I'm wondering, why is it important to include the race and ethnicity into that? That's just so deeply ingrained in the California Board of Education fabric that it shouldn't even be a topic here, because as one single board member, even if I were on the board for 100 years, those things aren't going to change. So, but those are important. Early literacy is important. And yes, it's clear people who don't speak English, no matter what race they are going to have difficulty with their children in the school system, because they're not going to be able to help their children sit down and read the way I do. Like, I have the advantage that I can sit down with my children and read with them and do their homework and read early on with them. For example, I was teaching my children Italian before they got into school. And they tried to put my child into an English learner program just because she didn't know a few words here and there in English. I think it's nuts, but.
All right, I want to pivot to teacher performance. And I'm wondering, how should educators be held accountable for their performance if they're not actually educating students well? Do you think student performance should be a factor in compensation for teachers? And if so, what would that look like? What are your ideas on how to keep teachers accountable?
That's a difficult question because I believe my children have had some crappy teachers and nothing ever happens. So that's difficult. And, you know, one's complaints can just go by the wayside. And the only thing that I could do was to help my child excel in the best way possible in that class. And teachers should be held accountable by way of how much a student garners at the end of their, you know, semester or school year with that class. And I would think that that's a nice way for in any sector, in the private sector, you are held accountable and rewarded by pay and bonuses and perks based on your performance. So why wouldn't that work within PAUSD or anywhere? I think it's not happening, and I don't know. I don't have a solution for that. I feel like I'm one in a million.
Do you feel like, I guess at the board level, then it would be a question of, would you advocate for some sort of policy or some sort of negotiation with the teachers union, such that there could be some levers of accountability for teachers?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first half of that?
Of course, yeah. Would you advocate at the board level for either some policy or some negotiations with the teachers union, such that there are some factors that might play into a teacher's continued tenure or compensation that has to do then with, you know, the students all took this class, this crappy class, as you said, and, you know, at the end of it, the metrics for did they learn anything did not show a whole lot of improvement there. So is that something, I'm asking if that's something that you would be supportive of? Is that something that makes sense to you?
Probably, yes. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but yes, I would probably be supportive of it.
And is that just skepticism that it wouldn't happen, or is there some?
Yeah, there's some skepticism there.
Is there anything like structurally that would prevent that besides political will?
I think that's the biggest obstacle.
All right. So let's move on to
not mine, theirs.
Sure.
Just to clarify.
Let's move on to another topic. I know that you've mentioned that you hold what you call traditional family values. That's been present in your campaigning. So how does that translate to your views about what's being taught in Palo Alto Unified, and also how the school administration of the school board is operating? How does your value of traditional family values kind of affect how you see what's going on?
Well, that's an interesting question, because my traditional family values, I think I'm very open and progressive with my children. I'm not a helicopter parent. I work hard to empower them to make good decisions, to come to me, to have open dialogue. Those are my traditional family values. You know, try not to have sex before you get married, kind of things. Don't smoke weed, you know, don't vape, don't do things like that. Those are part of my traditional family values. My traditional family values also indicate that the parents are the best advocate for the child, that the parents need to, not all parents will be. Sometimes family values go by the wayside because you're working so hard. I talked about how I stayed home with my kids, but I mean, we had a business, so I was able to work all kinds of crazy hours while I was still raising my children and volunteering in school. I didn't have a 9 to 5, so I had really flexible hours to still be there for my kids. And I gave up some niceties and some, career aspects so that I could be with my kids. Those are my family values. Those are my traditional family values, that my children are really important, that their education is important, that I'm there for them, and that I will always advocate for them for when they have problems or issues in school, that I can help them maneuver through the system, whatever it is, or their own perceived obstacles or emotional challenges first and foremost. And I don't know how that directly affects the board. That is my personal viewpoint. And I think that can only empower other parents to have the courage, perhaps, because in some cultures it is looked down upon to confront or authority or perceived authority, or be the adversarial parent. So I think it's really important that parents know that they have a right to say something, or that and again, I don't know how or why it even has anything to do with school board, other than parents have rights and they can assert their rights with regard to curriculum or choices or anything within, and it doesn't even have to be contentious. There have been times where I said, yeah, no, my child's not reading that garbage. Please assign something else. And my child just brought home another book. I said, nope, that's garbage. Ask them to assign you something else. And if they don't want to do it, then I will do it for them.
Well, I think you just put your finger on one of the issues. Like if schools are following a curriculum that presents information that you would rather not your student, your child, learn about, then what is it that you feel like the school district should do?
The school district doesn't have to do anything. The parents already have the rights. And in actuality, just to be clear, the curriculum, it was a pilot program book or pilot book. So anything that's pilot means it's not in the curriculum. It's an addendum that was chosen by the teacher or the department. So if you delve further into it, yeah, even if it were in the curriculum, I say, I don't like this book and my child's not going to read it, there's always an option for something else. There is. And parents need to know that. And it's not like you're asking the teacher to recreate the wheel. There's stuff already there, and teachers have a certain amount of freedom, I would imagine, to implement items that are not in the curriculum based on California standards, for example. Like even homeschoolers go to, the California Board of Education, follow the curriculum sort of based on what they need to learn, and then they pick and choose. So I think that's important. And you know what? I've never had a problem. Let's just put it that way, even though, and I'm very communicative, and I've asked the teachers, I don't like this. I don't agree with it. Please provide something else. It was literally a 7-minute Zoom call, done. My child had a different, something else to study for the month that they were working on that book. So.
Okay.
If I can jump in for a second, given that the school board approves curriculum for classes and reviews the material that classes will be teaching, are there books or material that's currently being covered that you would want to no longer be covered, or changes that you'd want in the curriculum?
No, I don't see that in the curriculum. Like I said, teachers have some amount of freedom to add or decide upon, and every school is different because it's not across the board that departments and teachers and classrooms can choose to bring this book into their study or not. So it's not part of the curriculum,
Yeah.
is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I've seen on your website that you recently had a post where you said you supported banning scholastic books from Palo Alto schools. I wasn't sure, are you referring to the book fairs or to all books by that publisher? And what's the nature of your concern?
Yeah, the book fairs and the books. Yeah, they're publishing a lot of garbage.
So would that involve removing all books from that publisher from school libraries? That's a large publisher.
It depends. But if you stop utilizing Scholastic books as your sole vendor and the sole provider of your books, then if that means the entire library is empty, then that just verifies what I'm saying, that, you know, in such an affluent school district, we don't need Scholastic dollars. We don't need their freebies given by way of how much money they make at our book fairs. Why is there a monopoly? You know, monopolies are not legal in this country. We're a capitalist country. Why is Scholastic Books the only book publisher doing book fairs in our school district, or in any school district for that matter?
And so I guess separate from book fairs, when it comes to the books that are actually in libraries, what would your criteria be for removing books from libraries? It sounds like you might be in favor of that.
Well, I'm definitely in favor of removing any books that have to do with LGBTQ and CRT.
What does that mean to you?
What do you mean? What does that mean to me? You asked me what books that I would be in favor of removing. Those are the books that I would be in favor of removing.
My question is, what constitutes a book that is LGBTQ or that you think constitutes critical race theory?
Based on the title, based on the list that Scholastic Books, the 62 books that they list as LGBTQ books, literature that publishes deviant lifestyle.
So can you explain?
And do you know what CRT is?
Critical race. Acronym for critical race theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and I'm against historical revisionism. I'm against it.
Okay. Is there any age factor that you would say it is maybe not acceptable for elementary school students, but it would be okay in a high school library? Or do you feel like these are the types of subjects that should not be in libraries in an educational system?
So let's go back to those parental values. Shouldn't I, as the parent, have an option whether or not my child is exposed to certain books? I should have the option whether or not my child is exposed to certain books. So why should the school library make it available? If I wanted to provide those books to my children, then I can go buy them from Scholastic. I can go online and type in LGBTQ titles into Scholastic, and 62 titles will come up, starting from the 3 to 5 year old set on up to 18. I just don't believe that certain books should be available in the library. They've never been available before. And the fact that people are sort of turning a blind eye to it, people with children, is kind of shocking.
What would you say to parents who say that they think that it is important that the school library has books that include characters who are LGBT, and that they
I would ask them why? Why is it important that the school have it? Why don't you buy your own kids those books? You can get them at Books Inc. and you can get them at Scholastic Books Online. Why does the school have to provide it?
And to go
the
back
school does not provide biblical or anything, any religious books. It does not offer any kind of, Christian, Christian education.
To address kind of how it intersects with the school board has policies around access and rights for LGBT students, and the district website has pages about making sure that there are supports for students who are LGBT. How would you approach those policies, and how would you approach access and inclusion for students or staff in those groups?
You mean with the books? With the books?
And more broadly in your role as a board member?
I support individuals. I support individuals. What I do not support is that administrators and potential counselors are cultivating a potential transgender lifestyle to kids who might be prepubescently confused. I don't believe that strange people should be helping my child into a direction about which that child doesn't know about. Children are very receptible and very easily manipulated, or they want to be popular. And if a child has some personal feelings about things, that should be discussed at home first and foremost. I mean, it's nice to have perhaps a counselor that a child can go speak to. But I don't believe that the school is for education. I don't understand how school all of a sudden became a social services hub. I mean, it's appreciative because my children and lots of kids I speak to do not trust the counselors at school and wouldn't speak to them for the life of them. So I find that very interesting. But I don't know what you mean by support. What does that mean? I mean, does that mean that you're guiding that child into a lifestyle by giving them books so they can figure out how to be transgender? I don't understand what that means. I don't understand why that's even an issue. I absolutely understand that people should be supported, that people, if they're feeling left out, I mean, I don't know what you can do. I mean, kids are mean. I mean, we've all grown up, right? Kids have all been mean and somehow we survive. But I don't understand what you mean, or if you're referencing that I am not supportive. I am not supportive of pushing a potentially confused prepubescent child into a certain sexual identity. They're not having sex yet, okay? They don't even know what sex is, and most of in their minds they're ew. So I don't understand why the topic is constantly coming up. I mean, we don't have a lot of what's going on in the rest of the country in the school district. We're extremely fortunate, okay? And there might be the errant, and I think in the business orientation that we had last week, that there was some percentage of non-binary self-describing. It was 0.0006. So I think a lot of and way too much focus is being put on a 0.0006 mindset, which is coming from the adults, not from the children. At a certain age, children need the compassion, the love, and the attention from their parents. And if they're not getting it, they need to figure out why not. I've talked to a lot of teachers. They don't want the burden, the burden of what can we do with these children who need this kind of help, or should we help them, or what should we do? You know, the teachers don't want that burden. I don't know if you've ever talked to them, or if anybody has the guts to say what I'm saying, but I do not want my 3 to 5 year old given books about, oh, I think I want to be a boy, or I might be a girl. No, my child, my responsibility, my guidance, my parameters are what's going to build the foundation for my child. Those are my traditional family values. And I want to know if my 3rd grade teacher is reading that kind of garbage book to my child. And I don't understand why that kind of material. And I have gay friends. I have gay friends and I love them, and they absolutely have a place on this earth. But those books and any talk of that lifestyle does not have a place in the school. Now, saying that, the children should be supported and should be protected, and the parents need to come into that dialogue. That is not the burden of the school administration. It's definitely not the burden of the teachers. And you will hear if teachers have the guts to tell you that they don't want that burden either. Would you want it?
Do you have similar views on sex ed?
Like I said, in my family, it's open. I haven't personally seen, I've asked my children about certain things in sex ed, and they don't remember or didn't see it. So, but I gave them the option. You can attend sex ed or not. I'm not a prude. I know there are some Muslim families who, in their culture, it's very, it's looked down upon, but they have the option to opt out. They have the option to opt out, and they don't have to feel ostracized. And I don't know how they can make their children not feel, you know, singled out because the children who want to opt out of sex ed go to the library or something. I know my daughter said she felt uncomfortable because the boys were in the class.
Do you feel like it is appropriate for the schools to offer that curriculum to students? That it is the place of schools to offer? Okay.
Yeah, I went to Catholic school. I had it in 7th grade. It, you know, it was a little bit different though.
So sex ed is okay. LGBT issues, not okay. That should be up to the parents.
Tell me what an LGBT issue is to you. Tell me.
Well, I mean, it could come in a lot of different forms. I think probably the dominant one would be through literature and books that have characters that are LGBTQ, and that they are represented as, you know, having full 3-dimensional lives. And so is the presence of literature of that type objectionable to you?
I don't believe that a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, or an 11-year-old has a fully dimensional sexual life. I don't believe that. In fact, in that time, in the adolescent, pubescent time, people are still figuring stuff out. And I don't believe that we or anybody should push them into one direction or another. I believe that parents, community, school, everyone should have compassion and not start giving them books that say, oh, you might want to be a boy, or you like girls. Well, when I was 11, yes, I liked girls, but that doesn't mean that I was LGBTQ. That would have confused me if somebody said, oh, well, here's a book. Maybe you're a lesbian. That would have totally confused me when I was 11 years old. I don't believe that that's necessary. I don't understand why this sort of pornographic perversion has come into the schools all of a sudden. And that is different from supporting a person who is actually LGBTQ. Like, okay, once they've decided their sexuality, or our kids having sex at 11 to 13 years old. One mother attacked me for my views. And I said, is your child having sexual, you know, relations at this age, in the 11 to 13 years old? Why are you pushing them toward being gay? They don't know yet. They're not there yet.
I think the argument would be that exposure to LGBTQ people, representation.
No, I never said I was against LGBTQ people. I said I'm against the literature.
Would be a part of the process of figuring that out for a young person.
I just don't understand why the schools have found it necessary to bring it in. Why all of a sudden has it become so important? 3 years ago it wasn't here. Why now? It's divisive.
All right. Well, I think that since we've gone an hour, we need to wrap it up now.
Did you get all your questions to me? All the questions that you wanted?
I didn't get the school commute pathways question in, but we'll save that for another time. Yeah, I just want to thank you very much for sharing your ideas and your thoughts with us. Really appreciate the hard work you're putting into your candidacy. Adam, was there anything you wanted to ask before we roll on out of here?
Yes, I'd love to tack on my normal question. So as a member of the community and as somebody that's running for office within the community, I'd love to get your impressions of Palo Alto Weekly and Palo Alto Online, what you like about it, what you see us being able to do better, how we might improve and be more valuable to you and the rest of the community.
Well, I have to be honest with you. I really never read either of the two, online or paper magazines or newspapers.
Why not?
So I read other things.
Just time?
No, I just choose to read other things. It's a little on the fluff side for me, but I can see the value. So let me be a little bit more positive. I can see the value to people about current events and news and what's going on. And from people I do know, they read it and they utilize it. It's part of their life. So so I think there's good to it. I just don't personally read it.
What would make it more substantive and less fluffy and more engaging for you?
I don't know, maybe stories, more intellectual stories.
Any kind of example? I'm just sort of, our focus is clearly on local, and not that there aren't
There's nothing intellectual locally.
Well, I think if it doesn't have, there's tons of intellectual things locally. I just think if it doesn't have a kind of clear local angle, it's less in our lane. So
I get it. It's less relevant. I get it. That's why a lot of people I know do read it, and it's part of their life and they enjoy it and they look forward to it. And I don't know, maybe I never read the Chronicle. I mean, I did for a while. I just stopped reading that. On occasion, I read the Wall Street Journal. There are other things I read that I spend my time on. And maybe it's just that, or maybe I have a whole slew of blogs and emails that I get with local events. Like I appreciate Stanford, the Stanford Arts, and I enjoy the activities and you know, their discussions about art and what's going on, music.
okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks
Thank you
again for
all.
your time.
Thank
All
you
right.
for your time. Thanks.